More breaking news this hour at 1 p.m. Eastern. So just a couple of hours from now, we are expecting a press briefing from the Coast Guard about the urgent search and a race to save lives on board that missing submersible that vanished after setting out to tour the wreckage of the Titanic. Now, the Coast Guard has been scanning the North Atlantic with 2 C-130s. They've also dropped sonar buoys that can listen to a depth of 13,000 feet. This is an effort that will only grow more desperate by the hour because that submersible is only believed to have about 48 hours of oxygen left for the 5 people on board. NBC News correspondent Kristen Dahlgren is monitoring the search efforts from Boston. Also with us, Captain David Marquet, a former U.S. Navy submarine commander. Thank you so much for joining us. Kristen, what is the latest on the rescue efforts?
Right. So we're here at the Coast Guard station in Boston that is running these rescue efforts. You mentioned that they're using those sonar buoys, trying to listen for any type of tapping, any people talking, any sense they can get of where exactly this submersible is so deep in the North Atlantic. So we've got the Air Force working on it, Canadian forces as well. They're asking for private vessels who are in the area to help out with the search efforts and anyone who has that experience with deep sea exploration. But really at this point, the Admiral said as of this morning, OceanGate, the company that owns that submersible, is taking the lead because it has the information, it has the technology, it knows the most about this submersible and where it was last heard from. OceanGate did release a statement. It says our entire focus is on the well-being of the crew and every step possible is being taken to bring the 5 crew members back safely. Keep in mind, this crew is also made up of tourists. One British world traveler, also a Pakistani businessman, and his son, along with, we're trying to get confirmation of who the other 2 members, the pilot and who else was running this from OceanGate are. So, you know, it's an exclusive experience that people pay up to $250,000 for. Here is what Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, told us in 2022.
We have an interview process, so you sign up. We have to make sure that people are healthy enough and physically fit. You need to be able to climb a ladder, and it's not a huge physical requirement, but it's more important that people understand this is a real expedition. We have, all kinds of challenges, not just weather, but equipment. And then once we've accepted the person into the program, they can pay to join, and then there's a lot of training that goes on. No one is just a tourist.
So at this point, that search continuing, and again, we are waiting to hear from the Coast Guard at 1 on the very latest, Anna.
Okay, Kristen Dahlgren, thank you for that reporting. Let me bring in the captain now. Given the timeline and the depths we're talking about, Captain, what are rescuers up against? What challenges are they facing right now?
The depth's it's a real problem. This submarine is 10 times deeper, essentially, than we would operate our military submarines. And the pressure down there is 400 times what we experience here at atmospheric level. In a spacecraft, you're going from 1 atmosphere to 0, so that's 1. This is 400 times the difference between what a spacecraft would experience between itself and the outside. So it's like they're on the backside of the moon. A, we got to find them. B, we got to get them back up to the surface. They're bolted in. They cannot open the hatch from the inside. So they need to be located, hooked, say with a cable, brought back up, and then we can let them out.
It's obviously incredibly dark at that depth. It's obviously very cold at that depth. Sunlight can't reach down there. The Titanic sits around 13,000 feet deep. We know a diver outside a vehicle can only survive a few hundred feet below the surface. And my understanding is there just aren't that many vehicles that can travel to that depth, right? What kind of equipment is needed here? And how do you think rescuers will go about this?
Yeah, the best kind of the kind of equipment is prevalent in the oil well industry, where they need to put wells on the bottom in water that's this deep, and they have remotely operated vehicles. And by my understanding, one of those vessels is on site or about to be on site, and they will use that to first start the search for the vessel. If we were to lower a hook, we're going to need some vessel to grab that hook and somehow hook it onto the disabled submarine, because otherwise it's just dangling 2.5 miles down there.
You were a submarine captain in the Navy. The type of vehicle they're looking for here is considered a submersible. Can you explain how that compares to a submarine? And I wonder, would there be any way for the crew on board to communicate in an emergency situation?
Yeah, so it's smaller. It doesn't have main propulsion, so it can't drive itself, say, from Halifax out to the Titanic site. It needs a mothership to tow it out there. But once it gets there, it has little propellers, and it could drive itself down and maneuver itself around the wreck. Now, they should have the ability, if they're not incapacitated, to communicate. Submarines sometimes carry pingers, electronic pingers. Sometimes there's an underwater telephone. And last result, you take a wrench and you bang against something metal, and that rhythmic banging, boom, 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 you do that, say, every 15 minutes, tap, 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 tap. That would be detected by those sonar buoys that you talked about, and we could triangulate the position.